My name is Claire Donovan, and for 20 years, I was the daughter no one saw. Not ignored by accident, not forgotten over time, but deliberately pushed aside, like I didn't matter enough to be part of the family. Everything in our house revolved around my sister Natalie. Her dreams, her problems, her future. And me? I was just there. I learned early not to expect anything. No attention, no support, no place in their plans. So at 22, I left. No drama, no goodbye speech. Just a quiet decision that I would never need them again. And for 6 years, I didn't. I built my own life, my own career, piece by piece, without anyone looking over my shoulder. Until one night, my phone rang, a number I hadn't seen in years. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick it up. It was my mother. Her voice was different, shaky, desperate. And the first thing she said wasn't, "How are you?" It wasn't, "We miss you." She said, "Claire, your sister is dying." I didn't say anything, not because I didn't understand, but because part of me already knew. This call wasn't about her. Then she said the one thing that changed everything. "You're the only match." And just like that, the family that spent 20 years pretending I didn't exist suddenly needed me to save her life. So tell me, if the people who erased you came back only when they needed something, would you save them or walk away for good? I grew up in a house where everything had a center, and that center was never me. It was always Natalie. Her achievements were celebrated like milestones. Her problems were treated like emergencies. Her future was something my parents talked about like it was the only one that mattered. Dinner conversations revolved around her. Family plans were built around her schedule. Even the smallest things somehow found their way back to her. And me? I learned to stay quiet. Not because I wanted to, but because it felt like there was no space for me to speak. I remember once, I got accepted into a really good program. I was excited, nervous, proud of myself in a way I had never felt before. I walked into the living room, ready to tell them. But before I could say a word, my mom interrupted me. "Claire, not now. Natalie has something important to share." And just like that, my moment disappeared. No one ever asked me what I wanted to say. No one came back to it later. It was like it never happened. That wasn't the first time. And it definitely wasn't the last. Over time, you stop trying. You stop expecting. You start telling yourself, this is just how things are. But deep down, you know something isn't right. Because being invisible in your own family is a kind of silence that stays with you. We lived in a quiet suburb just outside Denver, Colorado. The kind of place where everything looks perfect from the outside. Clean streets, big houses, smiling neighbors. From a distance, we looked like a normal family. But inside, it was different. I remember one winter. I was 14. I had worked for weeks on a science project. Stayed up late, did all the research myself, even practiced how I would present it. The day of the school showcase, I kept looking at the door, waiting for my parents to walk in. They said they'd be there. They always said that. But they didn't come. Later that night, I found out why. Natalie had a dance rehearsal. And apparently, that mattered more. I told myself it was okay. It's just one event, I said. But it wasn't just one. It was my 16th birthday, where my dad left halfway through dinner because Natalie needed a ride. It was my graduation ceremony, where my mom spent the entire time on her phone, texting Natalie updates, instead of watching me walk across the stage. It was every moment that should have been mine, quietly becoming hers. And the hardest part wasn't what they did. It was how normal it became. No apologies. No conversations. No acknowledgement. Just silence. Like I was supposed to accept it. Like I was supposed to understand. And after a while, I did. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I didn't know what else to do. By the time I turned 22, I had stopped expecting anything from them. No support, no attention, not even basic acknowledgement. I had learned how to live around the silence. But there's a point where silence doesn't feel normal anymore. It feels heavy, like something inside you is slowly breaking. For me, that moment came on a Thursday night. I had just received an email. An acceptance into a medical residency program in Seattle. It wasn't just any program. It was everything I had worked for. Years of studying, long nights, sacrifices no one ever saw. And for once, I wanted them to hear it from me. So I went home, walked into the kitchen. My parents were sitting at the table, Natalie right between them, laughing about something I wasn't part of. I stood there for a second, waiting for a pause, a moment, anything. But it never came. So I said it anyway. I got in. 3 words. That's all I said. My mom looked up, confused. Got into what? Before I could answer, Natalie cut in. Mom, can we not do this right now? I'm telling you about New York. And just like that, it happened again. My moment. Gone. No one asked. No one followed up. No one cared. I stood there for a few seconds, long enough to realize something I had been avoiding for years. This wasn't going to change. Not tomorrow, not next year. Not ever. So I went to my room, closed the door, and started packing. No yelling, no confrontation, just a quiet decision. If they could live their lives without me, then I would finally learn how to live mine without them. And that night, for the first time in my life, I chose myself. Seattle felt different the moment I arrived. Cold air, constant rain, a city that didn't know me. And honestly, didn't care to. For the first time in my life. That felt freeing. No expectations. No comparisons. No Natalie. Just me. My apartment was small, barely enough space for a bed, a desk, and a kitchen that looked like it hadn't been updated in years. But it was mine. Every bill, every responsibility, every decision. Mine. The residency program was brutal. Long shifts, sometimes 18 hours straight. Nights that turned into mornings without warning. There were moments I questioned everything. Standing in hospital hallways at 3 a.m., running on caffeine and exhaustion, wondering if all of this was worth it. But then I'd remind myself, this life, I built it. No one handed it to me. No one chose it for me. And slowly, things started to change. I got better, more confident, more focused. Like I was finally stepping into the version of myself I was always meant to be. Colleagues started to notice. Supervisors trusted me more. Patients actually listened when I spoke. For the first time, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was someone people depended on. And somewhere between the long nights and quiet mornings, I realized something I had never felt before. I didn't need them. Not for approval. Not for validation. Not for anything. I had built a life that stood on its own. And I was finally standing in it. The years didn't change everything overnight. They changed it quietly. One day at a time, one shift at a time, one small win after another. Before I even realized it, 6 years had passed. Seattle stopped feeling temporary. It became home. I moved into a better apartment, closer to the hospital. A place with big windows and enough light to remind me there was a world outside work. My name started carrying weight. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the kind of way that mattered. When I spoke, people listened. When decisions had to be made, I was part of the conversation. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I had already done that. And somewhere along the way, my family became a memory. Not a painful one. Just distant. Like something that belonged to another version of my life. No calls. No messages. No attempts to reconnect. At first, I noticed it. Then, I stopped checking. Because the truth was, I had built something real. A life that didn't depend on being chosen. Because I had finally chosen myself. And for the first time, there was no anger left. No expectation. No need for closure. Just peace. Or at least, that's what I thought. It was a Wednesday night. Nothing unusual. I had just finished a long shift at the hospital, changed into something comfortable, and finally sat down with a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. The city outside was quiet, just the soft sound of rain tapping against the window. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. I usually did, but something about it made me pause. I stared at the screen for a second longer than I should have, then answered. Hello. There was a pause on the other end. Not silence, but hesitation. Then a voice I hadn't heard in years. Claire. My chest tightened instantly. I didn't need to ask who it was. I knew. Mom? Another pause. Longer this time. Like she didn't know how to start. Or maybe didn't deserve to. Her voice sounded different. Softer, fragile. Not like the woman I remembered. Claire. I didn't know who else to call. I didn't say anything. Part of me didn't want to. Part of me already knew. This wasn't a call to reconnect. She took a shaky breath. And then she said it. Natalie is in the hospital. My grip tightened around the phone. What happened? It's serious. It's her blood. They said it's leukemia. The word hung there. Heavy. Final. I closed my eyes for a second. Processing it. Not as a sister, but as a doctor. I knew what that meant. I knew how bad it could get. Then my mom said the one thing. That made everything shift. They ran the tests. Her voice broke. You're the only match. Silence. Not the kind that fills a room. The kind that changes everything. And just like that, the family that had spent years living without me was suddenly back in my life. Not because they missed me. Not because they cared. But because they needed me. I didn't answer her right away. Not yes, not no. Just silence. Then I said the only thing that made sense in that moment. I'll be there. The flight to Denver felt longer than it should have. Not because of the distance, but because of everything waiting for me on the other side. Memories I had buried. Feelings I thought were gone. When I walked into that hospital, it all came back. The same city. The same air. But I wasn't the same person anymore. My mom was sitting outside the room when she saw me. She stood up so fast. Like she had been waiting there the entire time. For a second, she looked like she wanted to hug me. But she didn't. She just stared. Like she didn't know if she had the right. Claire. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just my name. After 6 years of silence. My dad was there too. Leaning against the wall, avoiding eye contact. Nothing about him had changed. And for a moment, I felt it again. That old feeling. Like I was standing outside my own life. Watching people who never really saw me. Then the doctor came out. Professional. Calm. Direct. We've confirmed the results, he said. He looked at me, not as a daughter, but as a match. You're her best chance. Not her only chance. Her best chance. There's a difference. A difference that suddenly mattered a lot more than it should have. My mom stepped closer. Her voice barely holding together. Claire, please. That word. Please. I had waited years to hear something like that from her. And now, it didn't feel the way I thought it would. I looked through the glass. At Natalie. Lying there. Weak. Unrecognizable. For the first time. She didn't look like the center of everything. She looked human. And standing there. I realized something I wasn't ready to admit. This wasn't just about them anymore. It wasn't just about the past. It was about a decision. That I would have to live with. For the rest of my life. I stood there for a long time. Not saying anything. Just listening to the machines. Watching the rise and fall of her chest. Trying to understand what this moment meant. For years. I had imagined what it would feel like. To finally have something they needed. To finally be the one in control. But standing there. It didn't feel like power. It felt heavy. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about choosing. Who I wanted to be. I turned to the doctor. What are the chances? He didn't sugarcoat it. With a transplant, she has a real chance. A real chance. Not a guarantee. Just a chance. I nodded slowly. Then looked back at my parents. For the first time. They weren't deciding anything. They were waiting. On me. And in that moment, I realized something. They had spent 20 years choosing her over me. But I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life letting that define who I was. So I made my decision. Not for them. Not for her. For me. I'll do it. The words came out calm, steady. Like I had already accepted what they meant. My mom broke down instantly. My dad looked away. And for the first time, it wasn't about approval. It wasn't about being seen. It was just a choice. The procedure wasn't easy. There were risks, pain, recovery. But I went through it anyway, because some decisions aren't about the past. They're about the kind of person you choose to become. Weeks later, I got the call. The transplant worked. Natalie was stable, alive. I sat there, holding the phone, waiting to feel something bigger. Relief, closure, maybe even peace. But what I felt was quiet, like a chapter had ended, without needing anything else. I didn't go back to visit. I didn't stay. I didn't try to rebuild what was never really there. Because saving someone's life doesn't erase the life you had to build without them. And as I walked out of that hospital, back into the life I created on my own, I knew one thing for sure. I didn't need them to choose me anymore. I already had. So tell me, if you were in my place, would you have made the same choice? Or walked away for good? Face without mouth fire. Please subscribe me.